Hello and welcome to the show. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avastitah bhishmam evabhirakshantu bhavantah sarva eva hi.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a focused look at the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 1. And we're zooming right in on just one verse. Verse 11. It's short, but wow, there's a lot there.
There really is. So picture the scene. Kurukshetra, the massive battlefield, armies ready to clash.
Yeah, tense stuff. And then Duryodhana, the Kaurava leader, he says something.
Exactly. Verse 11, basically his command is, "Therefore all of you positioned in your respective places support Bhishma alone from all sides."
Okay, so on the face of it, that sounds like, a military order, right? Protect the commander.
Pretty standard stuff, you'd think. But that's what this deep dive is all about, going beyond that surface read.
Because hidden in that command, you're saying there are layers. Psychological, symbolic.
Oh, absolutely. And even spiritual insights that, believe it or not, can connect back to our own lives today. Things about control, about trust.
And where real strength comes from. So our mission today is to kind of unpack all of that.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So first, the literal context. Battlefield. Duryodhana is talking to his troops.
And the order is protect Bhishma. Got it.
Protect Bhishma specifically. He's the commander-in-chief, a really big deal in their army.
Yeah, we should probably emphasize who Bhishma is. He's not just some officer. He's huge. Represents experience, tradition.
Immense authority. The grand old man of the Kauravas, almost. A symbol of their power.
So protecting him makes tactical sense.
It does. It seems like basic military logic. Keep your most important piece safe.
But, and there's always a but in these deep dives.
Yeah, right. But when you look closer at how he says it, all of you support Bhishma alone from all sides. It's intense.
Very specific.
Almost. Overly specific.
That's where it gets interesting. Why does he feel the need to spell it out so forcefully? If everyone was already 100% loyal and confident.
Would he need to command it quite like that? It does hint at something else, maybe a lack of complete trust.
Exactly. Or perhaps a lack of confidence in that trust. Is he worried Bhishma might waver? Maybe because of his ties to the Pandavas?
Or is he worried his own men aren't fully committed to protecting Bhishma above all else? It could be either, or both. It feels a bit like he's trying too hard to nail things down.
Yeah, it reminds me of, leaders who micromanage.
Tell me about it.
They don't trust the team or the process, so they try to control every single variable.
It's often a sign of their own insecurity, isn't it? Not the team's incompetence.
Totally. So Duryodhana's command here, maybe it's less about strategy and more about his own internal wobbles, his own fear.
I think that's a very strong possibility. He's projecting his anxiety onto the situation, trying to manage it with this forceful command.
It's this attempt to exert external control when maybe the internal feeling is uncertainty.
That's a great way to put it. He has this huge army, all this external power, but this one command sort of betrays an inner fragility.
Which brings us to the symbolic meaning, beyond just the battlefield tactics.
Right. This isn't just about ancient warfare. It speaks to a very human tendency.
How we react when we feel scared or unstable. We try to control things outside ourselves.
Precisely. We make rigid plans, we issue directives, we try to manage people, often because we're trying to manage our own inner state.
It's like, if I can just get this person to do that, or if I can just make sure this outcome happens, then I'll feel okay inside.
Yeah, and Duryodhana is doing that on a grand scale here. He thinks surrounding Bhishma physically will solve his underlying unease.
And the irony, as you said, is he has this massive force. Objectively, he looks strong.
But the command suggests he doesn't feel strong or secure. There's a disconnect. Maybe a disconnect from dharma, from that inner truth or right way of being.
Because maybe true leadership aligned with dharma would inspire loyalty, not command it out of fear.
That seems to be a core message hinted at throughout the Gita. Genuine strength comes from inner alignment, not just external resources. His army highlights his inner lack.
Let's bring this home for the listener. Think about work teams, family dynamics, any group situation.
Have you ever been in a group that had everything on paper, good people, money, time, but something felt off, like a lack of real trust?
Definitely. And what happens then? Often you see that controlling behavior creep in, right?
Yes. The leader, or maybe even just certain members, start trying to overmanage everything, checking up constantly, dictating tiny details.
Yeah, because they're afraid it'll fall apart, afraid of losing control. It's the Duryodhana playbook.
It really is. Trying to force unity force protection, instead of actually building connection and shared purpose.
Whereas real leadership, maybe like the Pandavas represent, is about fostering that trust from the ground up.
Exactly. It's about alignment, not just directives fueled by anxiety.
So that takes us deeper into the spiritual layer of this verse.
Because Duryodhana's focus is entirely external, isn't it? Soldiers, positions, physical protection for Bhishma.
He thinks that's the solution. More guards equals safety equals victory.
But the Gita, again and again, tells us that real safety, real strength, it's an inside job.
It comes from living rightly, from dharma, from connecting to something deeper, a higher awareness.
Precisely. Duryodhana is looking for a physical fix for what's essentially a psychological or spiritual problem, his own fear, his lack of inner peace.
And we do that too, don't we? We chase the external, the job, the relationship, the money, hoping it will fix the anxiety inside.
All the time.
Yeah.
And this verse shows the limits of that. No matter how many soldiers he puts around Bhishma, Duryodhana's core fear doesn't just vanish.
Because you can't impose security from the outside like that. It has to be cultivated within.
Which leads us to a really important point for self-reflection, for everyone listening.
Okay, so where in your life are you maybe doing a Duryodhana?
Yeah, where do you feel that intense urge to control things? To guarantee an outcome, force unity, demand safety.
Is it with your family? At work? Maybe even just trying to control your own thoughts or feelings?
And ask yourself, am I projecting my own insecurity here? Am I trying to make others act a certain way because I don't feel okay?
And what would happen if you tried a different approach? Less command, more connection.
Maybe more listening, more trust, instead of demanding proof first.
Because that forced support, like Duryodhana is trying to get, it often just papers over a lack of real faith. Faith in others.
And maybe even more fundamentally, faith in yourself. Faith in your own wisdom to handle things.
This really highlights that contrast the Gita explores forcing versus allowing, ego versus dharma.
Yes, Duryodhana, driven by his ego, his desires, his fears, tries to manipulate everything.
While the Pandavas generally seem more anchored in dharma, trusting the process, even when it's difficult.
It's that difference between trying to, force a river to flow uphill versus working with its natural current.
Duryodhana is putting so much effort into forcing things, and it just reveals his own doubt underneath. You can almost feel the tension in the command.
There's a good metaphor here. Imagine it's cold and you need warmth.
Okay.
One way is to build a fire. You gather the wood, that's like cultivating your inner connection, your self-awareness, your values, your own source.
Right. Generating your own heat from within. Makes sense.
The other way, the Duryodhana way, is to get a whole bunch of people to stand around you waving fans really hard, hoping their frantic external effort will somehow warm you up.
That's vivid. And clearly not very effective in the long run. You're relying entirely on outside action for an internal need.
Exactly. So the question for the listener is, which do you choose? Are you building your inner fire, or are you desperately trying to orchestrate the fan wavers?
Are you focused on inner clarity or just trying to control the external stage?
It really brings the takeaway from this verse into focus, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's about noticing that urge to control, to command, and maybe consciously choosing to let it go sometimes.
And instead, putting that energy into building real connection, real trust.
And asking those tough questions. What fear is hiding behind this need for control?
And why don't I fully trust my own inner wisdom here? What's blocking that?
So looking back at verse 11, support Bhishma alone from all sides. It's so much more than just military talk.
It's a snapshot, a perfect little illustration of that clash between grasping for external control and cultivating real inner strength.
The Gita's message seems clear. True strength is rooted. It's quiet. It's connected.
It doesn't need to shout commands. It just is. It comes from that inner knowing.
And next time, we get Chapter 12, Bhishma blows his conch shell, a very different kind of sound on the battlefield.
Yes, a powerful signal. We'll get into sound, vibration, and their spiritual weight. Should be fascinating.
Looking forward to it. But until then, maybe the invitation is to connect with that inner wisdom, that inner fire you mentioned.
Let that be the source. The more you connect there, the less you'll feel the need to control everything out here.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.